This is Pierre Delacote working at Planet Technologies. Let's talk about change management for once. And I want to address this, you know, the fact that change management is really beneficial not only for the organization, for the end users, but also for the IT department. Because I see a lot of misconceptions. So I try to discuss in my future blog, or it might have been already released, how and why the change management and organizational change management will benefit the IT team. So first, just to explain the context, I've worked on over hundreds of change management programs for over hundreds customers, and I will say a lot of time the stakeholder were the IT department. The decision maker was the IT department. But the perception of change management was not really clear. Often it stopped to adoption. But when you discuss with an IT department, you can see that the change management, organizational change management, is not there in their skill, so they struggle with that. But it's very beneficial, and for several reasons. The first reason I will say is the lack of time. When you're deploying a technology, you know that when it's hard. It's hard to deploy a new technology when you're not proficient in this technology. It's hard for IT department to do so. So it's even harder to try to foster end user adoption around this technology. And because the IT is so busy, it's not you can't blame IT people of not being superstar in end user adoption because they're already trying to ramp up on the new technology, and while they're working on other projects, trying to operate their business, and we ask them to do change management, adoption, and they're trying to fix the plane while flying. So it's pretty hard for IT people to handle all those changes. And so the tendency is to focus only on what they're skilled for, which is an IT deployment. The context is hard for IT when deploying new technology, and I think that it's natural to focus where you're strong. So they're strong on deploying technology, but having a broader approach, seeing the bigger picture, can help the IT to fix other problems, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. So, as we know, and I discussed that in several videos and in different posts, adoption, first, a deployment is definitely not enough. It's not because you're deploying successfully a technology that it will benefit the organization and the people. That's definitely not the case. That's a dream that comes from consumer world, but it doesn't exist in the organizational world. So deploying the technology is not enough. It's critical to be able to deploy technology without any problem. So it's mandatory, but it's not enough. So what comes next? So the second layer is you want people to use the technology. So that's what we call adoption in general. So adoption is focused on helping people to learn how to use the technology. And I will say 95% of the organization are focusing on those two layers. First, The IT department is focusing heavily on deploying the technology, and a little bit on the adoption side. But you need to know also that adoption is not enough. It's not because you know how to use the technology that you can leverage it for what you need. Uh, there's another layer is to use the technology for your job workflow. It's what we call a use cases, a use case. Then you take part of the technology, you take only what is essential for your work, and you focus on that because the technology is so wide that you cannot, learn all the technology. It's impossible. Nobody can. Even me, I learn a lot, and I don't know it all. It's impossible. But you have a better benefit when you focus on what is beneficial for you, for what you're doing every day. And if you understand how you can leverage the technology, that it will save you time in your day-to-day work, it will bring you some quality of working, then you'll have more momentum, you'll have more leverage, and the technology will be a benefit. And then you can start to talk about digital transformation. And the final step, there's 4 steps: deploying, adopting, leveraging through use cases, and the final step is to change the way you work, changing behavior, because it's if you want to align, for example, a whole organization to work together better, it's not just about the tools. It's not just about understanding the tool. It's not just about knowing how to leverage the tool. It's also about how you work together. What is the right governance? How do you align? How do you um, get consensus? How do you work transparently, and so on? So you need to change the culture. So just um, just to reiterate that, because I'm saying it over and over in all my videos. It's a journey. Digital transformation is a journey, and it takes time. And and you see that you need to start with deployment for sure, technology deployment, but build on with adoption and use cases and changing the culture. Um, but we can see when we discuss with end users, and we did several studies for several customers, and we asked them through a survey what are their priorities, and in terms of digital transformation, what is the most important for them. And I have 7 options, and they put in the last place, they rank it the lowest to get a modern digital tool. So their concern is not to have a more modern digital tools. That's not what comes first. What comes first is that technology, a digital transformation, will help them to better focus on their customer needs. And the second one is to get more focus on their employee needs. So you can see if you only think in your silo, uh, and I don't blame anybody, but if you only think as an IT person who specializes in deploying technology and trying to make the deployment the best you can, you're missing a lot of needs, and people are motivated by something else than just you deploying the tool. So it creates a distance between IT and users and business. If you don't see that, that's not where people are focusing first. It's not to have a new tool. They will be a little bit grateful if you deploy successfully a new tool, um, but then that's not what they're ultimately what they're looking for. So one of the goals of the change management, organizational change management, I'm going to call it OCM. Um, so it's to start to, after the deployment, to start to foster end user adoption, and a good way to start this journey, because it's a long journey, and quite frankly, it doesn't exist all the time, or it might have some bias. It's is to put everybody around the table. I mean, all the stakeholders, so IT, end users, leaders, business liaisons, champions, and having a discussion with them and starting um, by an assessment of what is the situation and where we want to go will help you tremendously. And if you are part of the IT department, I really encourage you first to do this assessment. So interviewing users, leaders, managers to understand their context, their potential resistance, and to envision the future benefits. Start with the assessment, start with interviews, and invite IT to be part of the interview as a listener. And that way, they will be first because the IT people know very well what is used. Most of the time, they might don't see the shadow IT, and they might learn from that aspect that some shadow IT is used. Uh, so they can help to go into a direction when we're interviewing someone, but also because they will learn from the end user. They will discover what the end user need, how they're using the technology, what is their day-to-day work, where they're focusing on, where are their pains, and so on. If you do a good interview, you will find out that. And being in the room listening will help tremendously IT to better understand how people are leveraging technology and what they're looking for, what is their need. So it's a first start to create a dialogue and an alignment between IT and business. And you can reinforce this dialogue by inviting uh, those same stakeholders to governance discussions, where you're going to make some decisions on why you want, what you want to enable, what you want to disable, and why. So having the business and the end users and leaders around the table to make those decisions will help people to understand those decisions, and they will feel to be part of the decision because they can weigh on those decisions. They can explain that this feature, maybe the IT doesn't want to deploy it because they're scared that they're gonna have so many questions regarding a new feature that you're deploying that they're not able to take the load of all those questions. But if you have a discussion, an honest discussion around that, then if it's critical for the business or if it's very important for the business, then you can make a compromise to enable this feature. But on the other side, the end user can make a compromise to not overwhelm the IT team with questions, and maybe create through a champions community to help them each other, or to centralize questions, or to be patient when they don't have the answer right away. Because also what put the IT department under tension is that when you deploy new technology, the IT department uh, is not ahead of time of everybody else, not a lot of ahead of time of everybody else knowing the technology because they didn't have any experience. They don't have all the answers. And you know, most of them are engineers and they like to master everything, and it's a quality, but it's not possible. So you don't want to wait IT to test everything for a year before deploying something. It's part of the velocity of the business. You need to be agile. You need to go fast. So the IT department need to be comfortable of not knowing it all, but being in the mindset of learning it all. So I think it's really important to have this real discussion and put everybody on the table so people can understand why maybe they're scared that deploying new feature might overwhelm the help desk, and have this discussion and creating that way when you have this dialogue, you you make the IT department to become a partner to the business and not to be a roadblock or to be seen as a roadblock or a resource. So it's really key when you engage in this dialogue to have several stakeholders that will sustain this dialogue and that will be able to voice this dialogue over the frontier of this governance board, if I can name it so. Um, and so when you do a change management program, that's part of the what I call the build phase. You build your strategy, and then you need to execute your strategy. And what is important when you execute your strategy, and what is beneficial for the IT department, is to have a champions program. I think it's really key. Every time I was involved in the champions program, it enabled the scale. You cannot scale through communication. You cannot scale just providing a learning platform, LMS system. You need to have relays, and champions are really good for that. And if you build a right community of champions, even if you design it big, and it's better to design it big so you have maybe half of the population that will be active. It's better that this half is engaging and helping each other and learning and transmitting what they learned, their knowledge, and answering questions instead of having a bottleneck of the IT trying to answer all the questions. The IT will have to answer some questions like technical issues or maybe technical questions, um, but most of the time they're overwhelmed with a lot of other questions that are related to the lack of understanding, awareness, readiness. So having a champions program will help you to scale the change and it will optimize the investment of everyone. People don't have time to learn. People don't have time to fix all the problems. So uh, if you have a champion program, you will just focus on the time of a few to help the other, and that will scale. That's the only way to scale in an organization, scale change. Um, and once again, when you're able to educate and inform champions ahead of time, you start to create a proximity um, between and trust between the IT team and end users, because you start to establish a dialogue, and this dialogue allows you to adjust your plan, because maybe you have an idea it will work this way at first, and then you figure out, starting champion session, you will figure out that something is missing around the governance, around the training, around the awareness. Maybe we should do it some other way. And also you will be able to start to share best practices. So some champions will be on the spotlight and show what they're doing and give ideas to others. And it will grow this way. You will be able to debunk some myth through champions, like, the cloud is not secure, um, and other myths, that end users don't understand technology, so that's why they need to be assisted. Both ways you can debunk myths with dialogue, and that way, having a champion program where you meet every week, an hour per week, and you train people, you inform people, inform the champions, you answer questions, you have an open dialogue, then you start to create a sentiment of common purpose. And this common purpose will ultimately lead to momentum in terms of, digital transformation, and first adoption use cases and digital transformation. So it's really, I think it's really beneficial for IT to be involved in a change management program for all those reasons. It leads definitely it leads to better alignment, and we all know that the main problem in all industry, in all organizations, is the alignment. And the alignment can only come from some sort of discussion at one point, an open discussion, and the discussion should be focused on one thing only: is to find a solution, a common solution. There might be some time where you disagree and you need to make a decision. Somebody has to make a decision, but as long as this decision has been discussed and is explained, and it's transparent, then it's easier for people to accept this decision. Also, and that's my final point, having this involvement in OCM program will reduce drastically frustrations from both sides, actually, from end users who in the past didn't understand why and how the decisions were made. And when you don't understand why, usually over interpret, and you have your own way of reading this, and usually it's not the good, you don't have a good reasoning. So you're very frustrated when you don't understand why we made this decision. You can still be frustrated if your decision, some decision has been made and you understand the decision, but you disagree with that. That can happen. But most of the time, people are frustrated because they don't understand why. And if they had some sort of explanation, they will. And also if they have been involved in the decision, that will be a huge difference. Um, so they're frustrated because they don't understand why the decisions were made, and they didn't feel part of the decision. That being engaged in OCM program with end users and IT department will lead um, to that, to the fact that you create a dialogue between IT and business, you create alignment, and it will avoid, I think, one of the main problems that I saw within a lot of organizations where the IT and business users are in their silos, and they really think um, only in their silo, and it definitely doesn't create an alignment, but it creates a misalignment first, but also it creates often a culture of assistance where business users are seeing the IT as a resource, and they ask this resource to do what they want, and this resource receives tons of requests, and they cannot achieve them because they don't have the bandwidth, they don't have the people, sometimes they don't have the skills, they don't know how to set the priorities, and all of that is because of a lack of dialogue, and so it's bad for everybody to not establish this dialogue. And OCM is a very good place, is a very good opportunity to start this dialogue for a common purpose, which is probably the project you're going to deploy, the technology you're going to deploy, but also you shouldn't stop there. You shouldn't just stop when the technology is deployed. You should keep this dialogue, I will say, all the time, and you will see a substantial difference and a very good momentum in terms of digital transformation. So that was my post in the video explaining why I think and what I saw, experiment, OCM is beneficial, highly beneficial for IT because it changed definitely the perception from end users on IT, and also a little bit the IT on the end users, and it helps to connect them and make them a partner and to find the right solution for the best. And I think it's a great opportunity to do that through an OCM program. So hope it was helpful.